Yeah, welcome to session today. So I'm Luke. I'm going to be taking you through the topic of getting your career started in UX and how to kind of build your skill set. We'll go through a different range of topics. We'll have chance at the end to go through any questions you have. So if there's something that is on your mind, please write that down and there'll be some time for some Q&A at the end. Yeah, without further ado, we'll get started. So as I mentioned, we'll go just touch a little bit on my background, who I am, and what I do in my current role. We'll touch a little bit today on career paths and going into setting up your sort of personal goals. We'll also go into a little bit on networking and your personal brand. So how important that is to build your design career. And then we'll talk a little bit more detail around getting ready for your first role. So everyone on this call might be in a different space at the moment on their design career, on their journey. So we'll go into a little bit. There are some practical tips. And the last bit, we'll touch on some courses that we run at CraftedUX that might be quite useful to help you get into your design careers. So I'm going to ask something of all of you actually at the start of this. If you could put in the comments of the Zoom call how many years of design experience you have, that'd be really interesting for me to understand. I'm sure it's a range on this call, so just put the number of years of experience. If you haven't got any career design experience, just put zero. For me, that'd be just very useful to understand to begin with. So I won't go on to anyone in particular, but just as a learning for me. But we're going to start a little bit of my background today. So I currently manage the design team at Bridebook. Bridebook are a marketplace, sorry. Similar to Airbnb for weddings, you can search for your venues, you can book your musicians, you can book your caterers. And we are the largest wedding platform in the UK. We're live in 134 countries. And I've been building up the design team there over the last 18 months or so. Previous to that, I've worked at a range of scale up and startups, but my career actually started studying industrial design. So I used to design physical products. I got into more of the digital side in my first role working for Adidas and Reebok. And then throughout my career, I've worked at a range of different types of businesses, from design agencies and consultancies, working with large clients on B2B and B2C projects, and then working in-house and building out design teams for companies like Sainsbury's. And then my last sort of 5 or 6 years, I've worked at startups and scale-ups. So again, building sort of design teams from the ground up, working at Marshmallow, who are a fintech-based unicorn, and then my last sort of year and a half at Bridebook. So throughout my career, I've moved to smaller and smaller companies. I find it a lot much more interesting myself. I can add a lot more value. And you wear a lot more hats, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And I'll just touch on Crafted. So Crafted is a company that I founded. And the reason why I founded Crafted was part of my journey and also what I've heard from a lot of the designers in industry. Um, the reason being there's a lot of different content out there for courses, for education. No sort of design journey is the same. Everyone's background is different. I think that's great when it comes to design and working in teams. But what we try and do a little bit differently is we try and focus on the design frameworks that are actually used in industry. We focus on case studies that are from live projects, and we try and set up you for positions and roles that you can hit the ground running essentially. So we have a heavy focus on collaboration, sessions with the founders and the teachers. We help build out your skills and do some portfolio and career coaching along the way. So that's what we do. I'll talk a little bit more at the end on what we do at Crafted as well, if you're interested to hear more. Okay, we're going to start on career paths, and I can see in the chat we've got a range of experience from 0 to 7 years. So some of these topics will be more relevant to you than others, but nonetheless, we'll go through them and touch them in a bit of detail. So as I touched on at the start, the sort of golden truth is that there's no standard path for a designer. Everyone comes from a different background, which is, I think, one of the greatest parts of being in a product and design role and a team, because you bring so many different perspectives to the table. And when you're looking and hiring managers looking to build out teams, it's not something that's looked, I guess, negatively on if you've come from a different type of role in graphics, in marketing, in data or what so. It's more about the kind of proactive steps you've taken to build out your design knowledge apply that to real case studies and problems, and build your craft over time. And yeah, roles within UX, they range. A UX designer, a product designer definitely where has a bit of a T shape of skills, and they cover everything from designing to research to animation to understanding how to write great content and copy, behavioral sciences. The list is endless, and I think that what makes one of the most interesting parts of being a designer is that not one day is normally the same. There's always areas to build your learning on and to learn from, which is a great part of the role in general. And if you're not familiar with the design paths within the industry of design, this is just a bit of an overview of, I guess, where you can start and get to. And this is, I guess, more of a generalization of what's available today, but you can start at a junior entry roles, you can get design internships, and then you can work your way up through those junior to senior positions to the kind of design management, and then running sort of departments at larger companies, which would move into VP and design officer roles. There is a new role that's coming into the industry in the last couple of years, which is a founding designer, which is a really interesting one. So there's a high number of startups in London in particular. They're looking for one of their normally their first 5 employees as a founding designer. So you get great access to the founding team, the CEO. You understand the functions of the business, and if you're someone that wants to start your own business, that's a role that I would definitely keep your eye out for. Because you'll learn a lot, and then you'll keep those foundational skills to build your own business in the future. And this does vary depending on the size of company, but a general rule of thumb is that you'd be in a junior role between sort of up to 3 years. Most steps within a design ladder, I would say 2, 3 years is a normal graduation point. As you move forward, you learn and you build. So yeah, going through senior, lead, and then all the way up to those sort of management-based positions, which can continue up depending on your path. And just an insight on, I guess, average salary bandings, and this one's just to try and help have some transparency. I feel like throughout my design journey and also speaking to a lot of designers and leaders over the years, it's not something that is consistent across businesses.
25, 35 mil.
Oh, sorry, I just meet you there, Clarissa. So these are just in the general brackets, and again, this differs depending on the scale of your business. But yeah, junior roles, 25 to 35, looking more senior, 55 to 75. And when you start to move into the management roles, that's when the salary can go up in that sense. And then just to get an insight, if you're not working or aware of startups, you normally get some access to equity. Generally means a lower salary, but you'll have more value later on. Oh, sorry, I'll just mute someone there. So that's a little bit about the background, I guess, of the roles in the past. We're going to go a bit more detail about now sort of setting your own personal goals, where you want your career to go to, and also how to just generally get there. So something that was passed down to me as from a previous manager was his name was Jez, and he was a very straight talking person, which I enjoyed most of the time. And the one thing that stuck with me that he passed on was that if you don't take a good charge of your career, that nobody else will. And this couldn't ring true in many aspects. So if you have certain ambitions of where you want to get to, you really need to kind of plan backwards of how you want to get there. And there's so many steps that you can do, which is great. And I'll go through some of those shortly. So reflecting back on yourself and what your goals are from a personal perspective and also a career perspective, just having a think, are you very salary driven? Is that your main target? Are you looking to work in a specific industry that you're passionate about? Is it fitness based? Is it automotive? Are you very interested in AI and new developments of tech? Because the decisions you make early on in your career and also projects that you work on will really help you move into those directions. So being intentional from the start and matching that with your passions is a really good way just to kind of build your career in a stronger way for certain industries. If you want to become more of a people manager versus an IC, so if you want to manage a team of people and do less of the actual project hands-on work, or if you want to do more of the IC work, that will again determine the choices you make as you move forward. And as I touched on earlier around building your own business, if that is an ambition of yours, if it's a product related business or anything service or anything else. Working in those smaller companies will give you a great rounded experience, contacts, it will build your network, and it will also help you understand how you raise money, build founding teams, and so on. So again, if you're intentional about doing that, then that's the kind of roles that you should definitely look for as you're moving through your career. And looking ahead, if you're someone today that's between roles and trying to move up from a certain level to the next level, I'd always encourage you to look outwards and to see the roles that you'd love to apply for and use those job descriptions as a target of your development. So if you're trying to move from a mid-level to a senior level, or even just move into a junior role, just looking at some companies' job specs, looking at what they're looking for, and then turning this into your target list and case studies that you can work on. So even if you don't have not in a current role, or if you are in a current role, trying to apply these to the projects that you're on, and then as you can work through them and tick these areas that you've got those gaps in, it'll just put you in a stronger and stronger position as you look to move forward. And everyone's different with how they want to structure their goals for their career, and some people might not set them today. Some people might set very detailed ones. Pardon me. But I'd always suggest setting some smart-based goals around your next step. So if your goal is to land a junior role or a mid-senior role or a lead role, what are those kind of milestones to get there? Are they measurable? Is there a way that you can kind of check that up on a monthly basis if it's around completing certain portfolio case studies, if it's around finding a design mentor and having regular catch-ups or attending events, and then putting a course maybe attach to that as well. And then kind of working backwards to helping you stay on track overall. I touched on earlier that the average time for someone to move between design levels is around 3 years. If you're someone that's been in a role for maybe more than that, it's really important that you kind of reflect, understand if your current skill set is moving forward in the right direction. If it's not going at the pace that you'd like, then have a look at setting more targeted goals and looking at those other job responsibilities on LinkedIn and other platforms to help guide you. Nice. Okay. Going to go a little bit into building your network and your brand. So one of the truths here is the stronger your network and profile, the more opportunities you'll find. And this can be true in my career and some other colleagues' career. You really get out what you put in with regards to your network. And to build that, there's many different ways that you can do that today, especially we're very interconnected and there's so many platforms available. So if it is things just like attending meetups, social events, webinars like this, connecting with other people, reaching out to other designers on LinkedIn. So not being afraid to, if you see someone that works for a really interesting company, in a really interesting role that you would like to move to in the future, then reach out to them, ask them questions. You'd be surprised how open people are to helping and give advice, just if you ask the question. And LinkedIn is one of the best platforms to do that on. The other aspect is looking to be more proactive. So where could you volunteer on certain projects if you're wanting to build out your portfolio? So maybe you only have one or two projects on there, or you haven't even got started. You can approach charities, you can approach startups just with a simple email. You can even review your most regularly used app that you feel like you can improve on a UX perspective. So how can you be proactive, setting up those case studies, learning, building out your portfolio? And that's what really hiring managers are looking for, even if you haven't got that experience in your current position. How else have you tried to get that? And that really goes a long way. And the last one is just building relationships about where you are. So if you're working in a large company, how can you reach out to other teams across different different parts of the company, sorry, in marketing or let's say social. Your network is really important for future roles, but also to learn from and build your skills in your current position. So just nurturing those relationships at work in your current position is always worth it. And especially those in leadership positions, their network's probably larger, and that kind of maximizes as that goes by. So something that's definitely worthwhile doing over time. And if you're someone that hasn't had a mentor in the past, it's probably one of the most important decisions that you can make on becoming a better designer. I've had several mentors over my career, currently have one at the moment. They definitely do change depending on where you are and what you're aiming to get to. But it's someone that gives you that reflective feedback that's kind of outside of your current role. Um, and someone that you can catch up on a monthly basis, a weekly basis, a quarterly basis, whatever works for you guys. And there's many different places you can find these mentors. So one could just be people that you work with, could be education circles that you studied with in the past. You could use ATP List, which if you haven't heard of it, it's a design community that exists and is great to match you up with other designers who are open to mentoring and give that time. There's also one called UX Institute that you could look for. The only tip here would be just to make sure that you're being proactive with what you're trying to get out of it. So again, it's really for you to ask questions, you to learn from your mentor, you to have a sounding board that's maybe a little bit far removed from your current role and give that different perspective. Um, but yeah, I'd encourage you to set up a mentor if you haven't already. It's a really powerful part of your development as you move through the design levels. Another aspect is around building your personal brand. So, from my experience of hiring and working with hiring managers, it's really important to understand what type of designer you are, what you can bring to a team, and how you can stand out. Excuse me. One of the ways to do that is your portfolio. So, if your CV is your, I guess, shop window, your portfolio is essentially the story of all the work in your career that's gone before around design. Um, and here's just an example of 3 or 4 different ways that people have described themselves at their landing page point. So if you are someone that is very much a product designer and not graphic focused, if you're someone that's maybe really interested in copy and content, if you're looking for more freelance experience versus permanent, you can kind of show the array of experience you have across different industries. If you want to be more of a strategist versus a designer, so more of a consultant and actually doing the work, that's also something that you can aim towards. So it's really following your interests and following your skills and just showcasing that in your portfolio at a glimpse and making sure that first view that a hiring manager would see helps them understand your skill set, your experience before having to dig deeper into your portfolio. And really putting out what makes you different. If you have a certain background that's very different to others, or you've worked in different industries, or you've had different life experiences, you've worked in anything that contributes to you building your skill set, your softer skills, not just your design skills, it's really important to kind of pull that out and add that to your story because it will help you stand out when you're applying for roles. Okay, we're going to go for the last few chapters here now. So the first one's around getting ready for your first role. So if you're someone that is currently looking to get into design to start with, there's a few tips that I would share around learning the foundations and applying them because it will get you pretty far into getting into those initial roles. So if you haven't worked in design before, even if you're into the start of your career, there's a few areas that are overlapping in the skill sets, and soft skills are ones that are not talked about probably enough in industry, and they're very important to helping you land roles, talk through your work, and getting also feedback on your craft and sharing and storytelling. So generally being a design and working for product teams, it's very research focused. You're always solving some sort of problem. Your communication is vital in how you can get that across and what the work that you've done. And then how you understand business outcomes is more and more important. How design impacts the business. There's definitely a trend in industry that design teams are shrinking slightly in size, especially with the introduction of AI, how that might be replacing some research roles. But this is more important than ever that we understand what we can provide a business by doing the research, by doing the design process. We can save them money in the long term by creating clear features and opportunities for them to build their user base, retain their user base, get them to spend more on their products and services. And that shows the return of design tenfold if you can talk to those metrics of the business. And some practical steps if you haven't got into design yet or looking to get into building your knowledge. So one is just understanding what the design process includes. So if you haven't immerse yourself much into what a product designer does, then I would encourage you to read articles, to watch YouTube clips, to read over design course overviews, even start a free short course to learn about design. If you're still interested at that point, then I would encourage you to start a foundation course of such. There's loads out there on the market today. I would not spend anything more than £400 or £500 on these. And this will give you an overview of each step of the design course. It would also be great if you can have immersive sessions with teachers that give you feedback so you can get the most out of it in a collaborative setting. And the next step I'd advise is around practicing your design skills. So once you've got that foundation course and understanding, how can you keep learning, reading, upskilling? How can you apply these skills that you have around research, around doing initial wireframes, doing your designs? And this does take a little bit of time to kind of build these muscles. Maybe moving into a more extensive bootcamp course that's quite case study heavy and again gets a bit more detailed into the design software and things like that. And the last stage is around building your case study. So on average, I would say a great portfolio probably only needs about 4 projects. The variety of those projects is key. And then you pull out different types of skills and learnings and strengths across those projects. You do not need to cover everything in your portfolio, and I'll go into that shortly. It's really about the impact you're having, the process that you've gone through, and then what your contribution was from yourself, and also what you learn. What's your self-awareness of your gaps in your skill set, and what did you lean on your team that helped you out and you do differently next time. And just to touch on the core UX skills, so if you are early into your career in UX and design, there's 5 key areas that I would double down and work on to kind of get you to that junior level, entry level roles. So that's around research methods and application. So how do you understand the problem? How do you run user interviews? How do you do market research, focus groups, and things like that? Then you can take those ideas into initial wireframes, initial ideation or workshops. How do you start to validate those with user testing? And then once you've done some user testing or some feedback using certain UX tools, how can you kind of iterate on those designs, create prototypes that are clickable, that essentially create the same experience as a built product would? Figma in particular is the main software, and then understanding that I've touched on already, those metrics and business impact, which is really important to understand. So I touched on this earlier around your portfolio is really your shop window. You really want to intrigue them, but not give everything away. And the amount of portfolios I've looked through that have gone through every step that really have probably undersold the person's skills just because they couldn't be succinct enough and clear enough on the impact they had and the steps that they went through in their projects. So your portfolio you can be built in many different ways, and I'm sure most of you probably have some form of one. And I'd always reiterate, it's not around all about the visuals. It's really about the variety of skills you're showing, the projects, the depth of them, and your learnings and your understanding of the business impact. So some sort of portfolio truths here is around the initial impression. So having that initial landing page that shows the range of projects, that shows your identity as a designer, shows some companies that you've worked for, that builds that intrigue, that will get you through the door for that initial interview. Showcasing your process in at least one project, going from top to bottom of every step that you did, or at a very high level what you did. And also not being afraid to show those unhappy paths. So what didn't work? What features did you design that users gave terrible feedback on? It's completely normal that happens, that you will fail on parts of your project work. And to show that actually gives a lot of authenticity to what you're doing and how you are as a designer. So when I see that in portfolios, I see that actually as a real strength to show that, talk about what they learned and how they improved it the next time round. And the last one is around what's the return on investment for the work that you're doing. So if the project was around keeping users on your platform for longer, let's say you're on the app, for example, of Spotify, and you wanted to keep them on for longer in their first session, how could you contribute to improving that? What was the outcome of doing that? Was they purchasing more products? Were they upgrading? Were they listening to more music? Were they referring more friends? So yeah, what's the kind of return on investment for the design feature that you created? And this is just an example of a nice portfolio project that goes through every single step. So I wouldn't say this is needed across all your portfolio projects, but shows a good degree of detail. So here is an example. They've shown what's the overview of the challenge, what's the business, what's the context, what's the industry. So this one is around a hair care product that is accessible to others. They can help learn about how to get new haircuts, new styles in their local area. There's a community forum, and it's aimed towards certain cultures that struggle to find these services for themselves today. So they've detailed their time frame, their role, the main challenge, the objective. So the real clear context of what they're trying to do is really important to see. They've gone into more detail around the key questions for the research side of things. So what were they trying to find out? What were those key learnings? And they've gone into the technical skills of showing user flows, decision matrices, what are the paths that users would go down to sign up to this app, to build out a profile, to search for, let's say, a local hairdresser that does this type of styling. So that's clearly shown throughout that into their wireframes. And this starts to build more of a story of how they've gone from those into their UI. So starting to build those flows out. And then there's far more detail on the left-hand side of this end-to-end project. But the main area I just want to put out here is understanding their future impact. So if there's someone that has actually released this product to industry, then you can obviously have metrics that you can show that are measured. But if you haven't had the chance to release your product to industry, it's absolutely fine to just show what you think would happen for estimations and what you'd also want to do next in your project. So if there's something you didn't get time to do in your current project that you've got in your case study, put forward what you would do next if you had more time, if you had more resources, if you had more knowledge. Again, it shows you being proactive, shows you being curious, and there's some really important skills to show as a designer. And then if you haven't got a portfolio set up today, or you're looking to create it on a new platform, there's a few recommendations I would share. So there's a lot of builders out there today. Some are a lot more intuitive than others, and obviously you want to save as much time as possible. So the ones I would recommend from this list is probably Squarespace and Adobe Portfolio are really useful just to drag and drop things into. Figma is also a great platform to share your portfolio on. I'm showing you this presentation right now from Figma. So it has some great slides features and you can create a free account through there. So if you want something just quick and easy, I'd recommend that. And then using AI software. So if you haven't used these already today, these will save you a lot of time. So things like UI Wizard, which can create wireframes and designs initially from scratch, using ChatGPT for research purposes, understanding the problem spaces, the markets, and even asking them to come up with ideas. So I use ChatGPT on a daily basis. We started a new project today that was around how could we help retain our users into the second session better than we do today? Because we see a lot of people bouncing once they first finish their onboarding. So I'd ask ChatGPT, what are the most popular ways to retain users in marketplace apps? And it would give me 10 options. I'd review those and it would be a great place to start with. And then things like that, DALL-E, which is image generating. Again, I'm sure most of you have seen similar things online these days. So we're going to come to the last section of today's talk, which I'm going to go through some of the courses that we've run at Crafted. And if you're interested in them, we'll finish with some questions from the group for the last 10 minutes. So just to recap Crafted, our values at Crafted, there's four that we always talk to. So one is that we look to focus on design frameworks. So looking at the UX frameworks and behavioral psychology that comes behind all designs, using the ones that are actually useful in industry and not kind of overwhelming you with the 30 plus ones from the textbook that you might see from other courses. So ones that are used in scale ups, in startups, in large organizations. The next one's around sort of case studies. So we will always share real case studies that are from industry projects. They're updated every quarter. So you're literally working on the same projects as live companies are and getting the best learning to help you move into those roles from them forward. We also help with career and portfolio coaching. So if you sign up to one of our courses, then we help you with your career advice. We help you with interview techniques. And that's a really important part that we always want to provide value on. And you're always part of our community members. So you'll get updates and newsletters and early access to meetups and things like that. And then we always want to make it accessible. So there's so many courses out there that cost a lot of money, and we want to make sure that design education at a high quality is accessible to as many people as possible. So we really try and keep the costs down as much as we can, and not sort of point towards excessive boot camps that cost thousands out there today. And the three courses we run are the Foundation, the Academy, and Professional. Our foundation course is aimed at someone that is entry level. You might be in a junior role and want to sort of broaden your understanding of the UX process. So going through those steps of research, design, validation, and building out some sort of case studies. The academy course will go into more detail into product strategy, sort of information architecture, more the technical sides of testing and understand the impact of your designs. And then our professional course is a fully immersive sort of 3-month bootcamp where you'll spend up to 34 hours of live teaching with your design leader, but also the other people on your course. You'll work on real industry projects that will have live feedback throughout. So you'll really be immersed into the same process, and you'll just go into more detail across technical sides of the product design process. And across all of the courses, we have live sessions and support. So there's up to 4 hours of coaching each week. You have lifetime access to resources that you can access through recordings and also through worksheets. You'll also have a course certificate, which is certified and you can share on your LinkedIn profile. And as I mentioned before, you'll become a community member, so you get early access to events and other things that we run in the future on courses and discounts and things like that. So just a quick overview of the difference in the modules that are run within those courses. So as I mentioned, the UX Foundation is more geared around those core stages. We'll still go into helping you with career guidance and portfolio coaching. Academy and the professional courses will go into more detail around the technical side, the product strategy, behavioral psychology and design, measuring impact, how to do that with business leaders as well. And then you're looking at workflows and AI tools in your design process as well. And just a sort of highlight of things that we have coming up. So we have some more live events on Meetup. So keep an eye out for those for a session next week on tips on design portfolios and how to kind of set those up. And then we have some upcoming courses starting in a couple of weeks, actually next week with a couple of spaces left on our foundation. And we have some courses starting towards the end of the month in early May. So yeah, reach out if you're interested and I can give you some more information or answer any questions on those. The last slide here today. So if you want to sign up to gain access to this presentation, just get your phone out and scan that QR code and sign up with your name and your email, and we'll send over the recording of today. You'll also get access to the Crafted community where we send newsletters out and early access to the jobs and things in our network as well that we want to share with our community and build that way.